Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania has finally delivered a full look at the sinister, interdimensional warlord known as Kang the Conqueror, and has given us a much deeper analysis of Nathaniel Richards and his countless variants. In Quantumania, we come to learn much about the multiverse itself and the course that the multiversal arc of the MCU is currently headed for, which might give us some insight into how the next two phases are set to unfold. Primarily, thanks to the ending of Loki Season 1, we presumably know how the multiverse is set to be annihilated, with the explanation there is that He Who Remains is at the helm of the multiverse ending, and that he used the ancient interdimensional entity known as Alioth the Usurper. But since the multiverse has been reborn, where exactly is He Who Remains now, as of course he died at the end of Loki? What is he doing as for the events of Quantumania, and how deep into the journey of He Who Remains are we currently on the timeline? Spoilers lie ahead for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And stick with us today as we see if we can pin down exactly where He Who Remains is, and see if we can find the variant of Kang who will one day be known as He Who Remains, the destroyer and rebuilder of the multiverse itself. Figure out exactly what he is up to, and identify exactly which variant from Quantumania's post-credit scene he might be. Perhaps the most concrete evidence of He Who Remains' whereabouts comes at the end of Loki Season 1, where we see Loki return to a foreign version of the TVA that he does not recognize, complete with a variant of Mobius who does not know who Loki is. If you've been following the channel for a while, you may know that we believe this is actually the same version of the TVA that we see in Loki Season 1, but that it takes place in the early stages of the organization's development, before Kang stepped back and before the Time Lords were established. The TVA, much like any timeline, has a past, a present, and a future, and we believe that this is the early stages when He Who Remains is first constructing the organization. And this is why Mobius doesn't recognize Loki yet. This would also explain the statue of Kang in the Grand Hall, which was built before He Who Remains constructed the Timekeepers, and ultimately reset the memories of his workforce variants. It's worth wondering why the TVA was in the midst of being constructed before the multiverse was annihilated though, which is a key detail, but this is simply because it makes the most logical sense. If He Who Remains wiped out the multiverse without a workforce to maintain the timeline that he had just destroyed, then splinter branches would immediately spawn once again, and all of his work would have been for naught. Despite how powerful this variant is, even he can't maintain the sacred timeline all alone. And so, we propose that he spent a considerable amount of time building the TVA in secret before unleashing Alioth the Usurper. So then, does that mean that He Who Remains is in the TVA? Maybe, but we believe we can actually do better and pin him down more accurately. In the end credit scene of Quantumania, we get our first look at the Council of Kangs, which is an interdimensional conglomerate of Nathaniel Richards from across the multiverse. We watch as presumably hundreds are assembled into a grand coliseum in order to discuss the matter of Warrior Kang from Quantumania, this variant who had been exiled and defeated throughout the course of the film. Here, we don't see He Who Remains outright so far as we can tell, but we do know that he and Warrior Kang follow very similar trains of thought. For a full breakdown of Warrior Kang's motivations and how they might have inspired He Who Remains, be sure to check out our full video that we did on that as well. But the gist of it is that they both see themselves as a threat to the multiverse, and we propose that this Warrior Kang was spending his days pruning as many timelines as he could by hand in order to prevent many Kangs from spawning as humanly possible. But how exactly does this give us clues to the whereabouts of He Who Remains? Thanks to this meeting, we know that hundreds of Kangs are about to learn about Warrior Kang's demise, showing that while his mindset may have been in the right place, his methods were flawed, and this might lead He Who Remains to reassess the current options and the plan established by Warrior Kang. Further evidence is added by the second post-credit scene, which sees Loki and Mobius observing a Kang variant known as Victor Timely in the early 20th century. What's interesting about this, however, is that Mobius does not seem to recognize this individual despite a grand statue being erected in the Great Hall of the TVA. This seems to indicate that Loki has found the original Mobius, who, so far as we know, is still stranded in the void at the end of time awaiting rescue. If this is the case, and Loki was able to find Mobius, then why would he be fixated so specifically on this Victor Timely variant? If Loki knew that Kang was in control of the TVA, then why wouldn't he hunt the variant leading the rest of Mobius's friend and colleagues as well? Well, we believe he is, and that Victor Timely and He Who Remains are actually the same person, which is established previously by comic precedents, Kang starting on one timeline and then eventually branching into variants. In the comic lore, Victor Timely is a particular favorite identity for Kang, but what makes him unique is that he isn't simply a variant of Kang, Victor Timely is an identity that Nathaniel Richards can assume at any point within the 20th century, as he has a dynasty of Timeleys that he can impersonate at any given moment. This is to say that Victor Timely himself isn't an original variant, more so an identity. Furthermore, the Timely identity is known for its robust robotics empire, with the first Timely introducing machines and mechanical devices far beyond modern engineering capabilities, and as we know, He Who Remains has a particular affinity for robotics himself. The Timekeepers were nothing more than lifelike animatronic machines that were designed to mislead the TVA, and if any other Kang variant is likely to utilize robotics such as this, it would be Victor Timely. Therefore, is it possible that Loki is in fact hunting the variant of Kang who is currently building the TVA unbeknownst to the rest of the Council of Kangs? And is it possible that Loki is leading Mobius to the individual who will ultimately become responsible for multiversal annihilation on an unprecedented scale? If this is true, then we propose the timeline goes as follows. First, He Who Remains is inspired by Warrior Kang's ideals, a theory which again, we have much more to elaborate on in a video that we encourage you to check out. From here, he understands that in order to make this process work, he needs to do something different from Warrior Kang, where he failed. Where Warrior Kang went from timeline to timeline, his efforts were ineffective due to the rate at which deviant branches ultimately were spawning. After the meeting informs the entirety of the council that Warrior Kang has been killed, He Who Remains, or rather Victor Timely right now, realizes that he needs to adjust his plan. So, He Who Remains begins construction of a clandestine organization, one designed to maintain the timeline, complete with technology that can prune entire realities. He pulls variants from timelines, trains them, builds up an infrastructure, and develops the mission of the TVA, which of course entails his personal input, and while he is traveling the multiverse, he would wear this armor that we see in the statue of the TVA headquarters. In order to remain hidden, however, he assumes the identity of Victor Timely, and he may have used the Timely identity before the TVA ever began its development. But Loki was able to not only rescue Mobius from the end of time, but was able to track the TVA's founder back to this century, where we see the end credit scene of Quantumania ultimately take place. From here, Loki may be set to confront Victor Timely, who could reveal more about the creation of the TVA, and once the TVA is strong enough, Timely will seek to unleash Alioth when the time is correct, purging the multiverse in one fell swoop. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of this theory? Do you think we found He Who Remains? And do you think that this is a solid assessment of his current trajectory? What do you think we're missing? And what other details do you think we've overlooked? We'd love to hear your thoughts and inputs, as well as your suggestions down in the comments down below. And as always, my friends, hit that subscribe button to assemble and join our team, and I hope you enjoyed the video.